Hello, Chaz Marler from the Pair of Dice Paradise board game podcast, welcoming you to another episode in our The Silver Lining series. The series which often takes a look at things behind the scenes here. Well, today's segment may be off topic, perhaps even self-indulgent. But in honor of Father's Day, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to share a story with you. Today is Father's Day, and for the last 7 years, I have been eligible to celebrate it. Better yet, my daughter, V-Bug, is now at the age where I'm actually starting to be able to introduce her to more complex board games and share those with her, and it has been great. But this isn't a story about my daughter, but about my father, and the impact that board games have had on our relationship. My mom and dad got divorced when I was in kindergarten. And being that young, I honestly have only a handful of memories of my dad from before the divorce. Now, going on throughout grade school and middle school, I'd only see him on the major holidays and perhaps a day or two during summer vacation. Then, when I was in high school, every now and then he'd call me in the evenings during one of his breaks at work. Oh, those phone conversations were the most agonizing exercises in father-son time that I can imagine. Every single phone call followed the same pattern. A minute of nervous small talk, followed by a minute of awkward silence as we both just struggled to figure out what in the world to say to each other next. Now, often, those evening calls would be a welcome interruption while I was doing homework. Now my dad is pretty good at math. In fact, I think he was an accountant at one time. So if I just happened to be doing something mathy, I'd hear his voice just perk right up. One night, I was fighting my way through geometry, trying to memorize the formula for calculating the area of a circle, which, for those of you playing along at home, is pi times radius squared. My dad knew this formula, and he just rattled it off right from memory. And he even gave me a mnemonic phrase to remember it. Pi r square? No! Pi r round! It worked. Thanks to that little phrase, I still remember the formula for finding the area of a circle, and I know that I'm going to be able to continue to do so for the rest of my life. But more important than the little memory trick was the fact that, thanks to the subject I was studying, we were able to have a conversation that lacked the usual awkward pauses. In the years since high school, as I've grown older, the awkward pauses in our conversations have lessened. But I still often find myself just grasping for what to say next in order to continue propelling our conversations forward. And what's more, now that I'm a father myself, it's allowed me to see things from the parent's perspective. Things that never occurred to me as a kid. For instance, if something were to cause the relationship that I have with my daughter to become as disconnected as the one that I have with my dad, well, let's just say that now I can finally understand how every one of those phone calls must have just been absolutely heartbreaking for him. He must have been sitting there hoping that I'd just say anything to let him know that his son loves him just as much as he loves his son. Well, I hope that the message made its way back to him through all those awkward pauses. But I know I did a horrible job at it. My dad called me a couple weeks ago. We made small talk about the usual things. Then he mentioned this Pair of Dice Paradise podcast and how much he enjoyed seeing his granddaughter's cameo appearances in them. And we talked a little bit about some of the silly things that her and I have done on the show. Then he went on and told me about a gaming group that he'd been getting together with recently, most often to play a card game called Wizard. He talked about how it plays and his strategies, and he shared some of the stories about the things that have happened during some of their gaming sessions. Well, after the call was over, I just started to go about my business again, when suddenly I realized that the conversation was one of the most mutually engaging ones that we'd had since high school geometry. So, of all the gifts that the board gaming hobby has given to me, time spent with old and new friends, an activity to share with my daughter, this podcast and the people I've met through it, the most special gift may very well be having discovered another topic that I can share with my dad. Now, yes, I am painfully aware that I don't get in touch as often as I should. But every Father's Day, I do think about you and how special you are to me. And this year, I wanted to take advantage of the opportunity that this podcast has given me and say, Happy Father's Day. Love you, Dad. '55 Chevy, '56 Chevy, '57 Chevy, '57 Chevy 210, '57 Chevy Bel Air, '57 Chevy Bel Air Nomad. See? You thought I wasn't paying attention during all those swap meets.